Well, kicking things off here on Open, the race to stay in the race is what's continuing today, as Republican frontrunners need to gain 1,237 delegates to win the nomination. Speaking of Donald Trump, that is. The Democratic Party on the other side needs 2,383 to win the nomination. Now, the question is, do the frontrunners need to worry about losing the nomination? Here to discuss this and much more is political commentator Mariah Starr. And Mariah, good to have you.
Great to be here again. Thank
Good.
you.
Well, listen, let's go front and center on this one here. We know yesterday, especially in the Republican Party, all members of the GOP presidential candidates saying, first of all, they will not, in essence, support the party's nominee. With the fact that Donald Trump is leading right now, any clear path to just outright winning the nomination?
There is. When he competes in New York State and then in California on June 7th, he could pass that magic 1237 threshold. Mm-hmm. And there have been a lot of political scientists who've said, like Larry Sabato at University of Virginia, have said he could actually pass that threshold by 5 or 10 delegates. So it is possible to completely clinch the nomination for him.
But if you're Ted Cruz on the other side, not so good news.
Not so good news, you're right. Unless Kasich manages to come up. So it is a real challenge for the Republicans to figure out how to both stop Donald Trump and whether to field someone else. As
you look right there at the screen, we're seeing the screen, and you talk about the delegates to date, particularly the Republican Party, Donald Trump 735, of course, Ted Cruz 461, and John Kasich 143. The Ohio governor, people are saying, why are you still in? No clear path to win. And some people are saying, just to frustrate the establishment.
Yeah. The establishment wants Kasich there because he is actually the most viable general election candidate. So think of this as a game of chicken. Two cars heading toward each other as fast as possible, and Kasich is there on the side knowing that when they both destroy each other, he'll be the nominee. Mm-hmm. So it's a strategy that has worked in the past. You let the other people kill each other, and then you're the nominee. But it's a high-risk strategy, and the Republican Party is looking for a candidate, a not-Trump candidate, to run if Trump is the nominee. So we're looking at a three-race election automatically right there.
Contested primary we're talking about when we get to Republican National Convention. What's your thought? Because Donald Trump's already alluded to the fact that if they try to steal the nomination away from him, then the Republican Party is going to really have to answer for this.
Yeah. So a contested convention hasn't happened since 1976 when Gerald Ford won over Ronald Reagan. And Trump is essentially saying if they contest it and someone else is the nominee, he will run as a third-party candidate and he will not support the Republican nominee. So we're looking at not just a contested convention, but almost it's a guarantee of a three-party race with the Republicans looking for, say, Rick Perry or even Condoleezza Rice as a possible third-party candidate.
And with all this said, let's talk about what that actually means for the Democratic Party. First and foremost, let's talk about Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders saying that he is coming, and he's coming to visit the Bronx. I think the borough of the Bronx is very excited just to see a presidential candidate like Bernie Sanders come through.
Yes.
Talking to some people on the way in, and they're like, can't believe that he's coming, but it's a good thing.
It's a very good thing. I mean, he's originally from Brooklyn, as we all know, a Brooklyn Jewish guy, and he's been a senator from Vermont for a while. So having him come to the Bronx is this amazing, like a celebrity coming, because he supports lots of the programs that would benefit the Bronx. Mm-hmm. Free education, free health care. I mean, the Bronx could really benefit from a Sanders program, a Sanders presidency with the Democratic Congress. But the question is, could he win the nomination? And the fact is, he has actually a path to the nomination if he is able to win Pennsylvania, even if he wins New York, because there's a lot of people who are now coming out for him. The young people, we have a lot of Sanders support bubbling up from the surface. And when we saw the wins in Washington State, Alaska, and Hawaii, we saw a diverse coalition coming out for Sanders. So it's going to be a fight to the finish, with, again, California probably deciding the entire nomination for Clinton or Sanders.
So with the big Democratic Party here, we know the Democratic machinery that's here in the borough of the Bronx as well as across the city. Many people say that this should be a lock for Hillary Clinton. Agree, disagree?
It should be, but what we have to remember is Clinton's not originally from New York. She's from Arkansas, and she only came to New York as a senator after she was First Lady. And she really represented Wall Street. Whereas Sanders is born and bred Brooklyn. I mean, he has a lot of support here. So it could be a real race. And we're seeing a lot of polls shifting towards Sanders, especially after he won Washington State, Alaska, and Hawaii in landslides. I mean, Clinton is winning landslides in the South, but the Northeast is much more Sanders territory.
But what happens if the senator can't carry her own state? I mean, I think it's pretty much a thought that if you can't carry your own state, you've got a major problem.
That is a huge problem. And she might face the same challenge that Rubio faced in Florida. If Sanders manages to win New York, then there'll be pressure on Clinton to drop out, even before the California primary. So we're going to be seeing a really big contest. And in fact, I've told my students that they should vote in the New York primary on April 19th. Everyone should vote, because this is the make or break election for both candidates.
So you really feel this will be the make or break?
Yes. New York, April 19th, will be the election the entire country is looking at. Because if Clinton loses that election, there'll be lots of pressure from the superdelegates for her to drop out if she can't even win her own state.
What do we see happening in the near future?
In the near future, we're going to be seeing Wisconsin on April 5th. And then Wisconsin looks to be going for Sanders. And then after that is New York. And New York, if it goes for Clinton, I mean, it's going to be a very interesting dynamic as we see these big delegate-rich states, swing states even, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, all being battle states for the Democrats. And for the Republicans, we'll be seeing the same thing. So we're going to be probably seeing Donald Trump marching forward and accumulating enough delegates to just barely clinch the nomination in the first round.
With this huge rift that we see amongst the GOP, you still have some people that are hanging out in the balance right now.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Marco Rubio, because even though he suspended his campaign, he's got some delegates hanging in the balance.
He does, yes.
So what does this mean for Marco Rubio, given the fact that he has, quote unquote, suspended his campaign?
Well, one of the great things about delegates is that because they're pledged, you can sort of direct them to one candidate or the other. And so what Marco Rubio is in position to do is kind of be a kingmaker if neither Donald Trump or Ted Cruz has a sufficient number to be the nominee. So he could give one of them a boost to reach that total. But that's the thing. I mean, he's already bowing out. He took his name off the ballot in California. So it seems like Rubio has conceded the entire race. But during the convention, you might in fact see a whole new ballgame, because the convention is its own world by itself. After the first ballot, you might see some party shenanigans, in a sense, you haven't seen in 50 years.
When we talk about Donald Trump, we know the latest with his campaign advisor, senior campaign advisor, now being charged with misdemeanor battery. But yet and still, Donald Trump saying, listen, I support the person. They should have never done it. How much of a black eye is this for the Trump campaign, given the fact that as he seems to have toned down some rhetoric, seems to try to present himself to be more presidential, now you have this come upon you?
It is not a black eye at all. Trump has had so many black eyes, he's almost the Teflon candidate like Ronald Reagan was. Nothing Trump says or does will turn off his supporters. In fact, his former advisor, who wrote an open letter to Donald Trump's supporters, has said that as Donald Trump says more outrageous things, his support goes up instead of down. They like him because he says outrageous things. So it's the reality TV show logic applied to politics. We've never seen this before. And so I'm suspecting that Donald Trump will continue to say outrageous things up until the convention, and his support will continue to increase as a result.
But Mariah, I think the main question people want to ask now is, listen, when you got a guy like Donald Trump, who certainly wasn't a presidential contender wasn't considered to be one from the beginning, a Ben Carson, somebody who's not had political experience, yet and still at one juncture, they both, well now Trump leading, Carson, of course, now out, but people with no political experience. Is America fed up with, quote unquote, the political correctness?
They are fed up with politicians who speak in a very calculated, measured tone to get the most votes. They want people who are not part of the system, who are not part of the establishment, because they see the establishment as oppressing them, as taking away their rights. And it's largely because people are jobless or they're underemployed. And they really see Washington as not doing anything to help them get out of this. So they blame the establishment, they blame politicians for doing this. So you're going to be seeing lots more people like Trump, like Carson, like Carly Fiorina, This is the anti-politician election.
And if you're Bernie Sanders, this is also something that works in your favor because in many ways Hillary Clinton is viewed as the establishment.
Exactly. And which is very strange because she and her husband campaigned as anti-establishment in 92. So 24 years later, she's viewed as the essence of the establishment. And in fact, she probably is, given her ties with Wall Street, the money she collects from Goldman Sachs. So Hillary Clinton has become synonymous with the establishment, and Bernie Sanders has said, I'm going to collect all my contributions from ordinary people, proving that I'm not part of the establishment. So that's why Bernie Sanders is so popular. He's proving he can go outside the campaign finance system and still be competitive, which is an amazing feat by itself.
All by itself. Mariah Starr, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. And as always, you can catch Mariah and the rest of our political analysts every week here Wednesday on Open when we take a look and crack open the world of politics. Taking a quick break, but when we return back here on Open, we're going to talk about the GOP's position towards Muslims, fair or unfair. We'll be right back right after this.